Now, before we fill the favorites tab with live, which means that we'll have to write some logic for this app, I want to focus on adding a drawer, which is the other major navigation feature Flutter gives us, which we haven't had a look at yet. So let's add a drawer, and let's add it here on the tabs screen. In this app bar here next to your favorite or categories, depending on which page we loaded, I want to have this hamburger icon which opens up a drawer. Now, thankfully, Flutter makes adding such a feature really, really simple. You add a drawer by simply going to your scaffold, not to the app bar, but to the scaffold, and there you can add a drawer argument. Now, the drawer argument typically takes a drawer widget, which is a widget built into Flutter, which automatically gives you a drawer with a nice backdrop. Backdrop is that thing that grays out the background behind the drawer and allows you to add content to that drawer. Now, on that drawer, you can add any content you want, any widgets you want. For example, to start really simple, I'll just add a child widget here where I say the drawer. Now let's see what this does if I add this simple drawer, just one line of code added. This line of code here gives us this hamburger icon automatically managed by Flutter, and if we tap it, this drawer slides open. You see the nice backdrop, this gray background, which you can tap to close the drawer, and you see behind the status bar at the top, the drawer text here. You can also close the drawer by swiping. So this is what you get out of the box with this drawer widget. And of course, typically you would not just add a boring text here, but a more meaningful content. Now, the content I do want to add here are essentially two buttons, two links, you could say, that take us to different pages in our app. One should always take us back here to this tabs screen, so to our meals section, and the other link should take us to the filters we can set to filter for vegan or vegetarian food. So these are the two links I want to have here. So let's add them to this drawer now. And since we'll add quite some content, I'll not add that here, but I'll actually create a new widget. Because you might remember, splitting your app into widgets is never a bad idea. So in the widgets folder, I'll add a new widget and I'll name it main_drawer. The name, as always, is up to you. And that will be a stateless widget here. In that stateless widget, which I'll also name main drawer, I want to handle or I want to compose the content for this drawer. So that means that I, of course, return a drawer widget here. And now the child of the drawer here, as I mentioned, can be anything you want. You can build any content here into your drawer. I want to have a column in here because I want to have a couple of items on top of each other from top to bottom inside of that drawer. So let's add the children here. And as always, you can, of course, style this drawer however you want. I want to have a little container at the beginning, which has a height of 120 pixels and a width of double infinity, which means it takes all the space, all the width it can get, which has some padding, maybe of edge insets all 20. And again, I mentioned this over and over again, but these are always values you can play around with and you can style the way you want. I'll add an alignment. We have never done this before in the course. This controls how the child of the container is aligned inside of the container. And here I want to align the content with alignment dot center left to have it in the center but moved all the way to the left. So vertically it's in the center, horizontally it's on the left. Now that's my container. In the container I want to have a child, which should be a text widget, where I say cooking up. And of course, you could put any text in there. It's just some fancy text for our application here. And I'll style this text a little bit by providing my custom text style here, where I will set the font weight to, let's say, font weight W900. This picks a weight of 900. If you inspect your options here on the font weight, you see that there you have shortcuts like bold and normal, but you can also specify a concrete weight like weight 900. And if you remember, in the pubspec YAML file, we set up a weight 900 for Railway, which is our default font for the app, for this very thick Railway font. So I'm using that font style in the end here. Railway is the default font for the app, so I don't need to set the font family here. That's not required. I will set the font size, however, let's say to 30, and a color to theme of context primary color. And one other thing which I forgot up there, I want to add a background color to the overall container where I use my accent color. We can do this with the color argument on the container. By the way, an alternative always is decoration with box decoration where you then set the color. This does the same as the color argument. If you just want to set the color, there is no need to use this more complicated decoration approach. Only do that if you also want to set some other decoration like a border. If you do use decoration, however, you have to set the color also through decoration and not through the color key. Otherwise you would get an error by Flutter. Here I only want to set the color though, so there's no need to use the decoration. With that, we have no links in our drawer yet. So below that container, which basically creates a heading at the top of the drawer, let's now work on the concrete links on the buttons we can click. First of all, I'll add a sized box with a height of 20 to add some spacing between our header here and now the concrete content. And here you can, of course, again, add whatever you want. What looks particularly good in drawers, in my opinion, are list tiles. So I'll add a list tile here, and on that list tile, I'll set an icon at the beginning with the leading argument, with icons restaurant, which I think fits the meal theme pretty well, where I also will give this icon a size of 26. This basically works like a font size to make it a little bit bigger. And then add a title on the list tile, which holds a text widget where I say meals, and where I, of course, also want to add a style. So my own text style here, where in my case here, I want to set the font family to Roboto Condensed, like this. No typo there, hopefully. Set the font size to 24, a little bit smaller than the icon. And the font weight to font weight bold. Now, as a side note, W700 would be the same like font weight bold. So if you want that default bold style, however, you can, of course, just use that. Now, very important now, besides leading and title, I now also want to register tabs. And conveniently, the list tile has an onTab argument where we can register a function that should be triggered when we tap here. And in here, I soon want to do something to go to a different page. Now let me copy that list tile here and create another one here with, not with the restaurant icon, but with the settings icon, which is this gear icon here. And then here I'll say filters or settings or whatever you want to use, same text style, and therefore yes, you could of course also use a builder method here. Why don't we do it since we learned it? Let's cut the list tile and add a new method here in the main drawer, which returns a widget. Build list tile, which then simply returns our list tile here. And of course, we have a dynamic title, so that should be passed in as an argument, and the icon data should also be passed in. What you pass to an icon here, what's returned by icons, is of type icon data. As you can see, if you hover over icon, then you see that it needs icon data for its icon. So that's what I also expect to get here, because that's different for every list tile. And then here, instead of saying meals, I can use the title argument we're getting. And instead of using icons restaurant, I use the icon we're getting here. With that, we can use the build list tile method down there and pass in meals here for the first list tile, and then icons.restaurant, which gives us such icon data. And then do the same here for the second list tile. Delete all of that and instead call build list tile, where we have filters and use icons settings. Now, Also important, I did mention this before, but it is important to keep in mind, instead of using a builder method, you could of course also put that into a separate widget which you use, and it might even be a widget which you only store in that same file. Normally, we have one file per widget, but if you have a widget which you only use in conjunction with this widget here, you could definitely store that extra widget in the same file. So using a widget instead of a builder method would be totally fine. Generally, there is no difference. That would change a little bit if in that widget you could potentially create here, you would maybe change some state or use the theme, so something which could trigger the build method of the surrounding widget. Then putting this into a separate widget would be good, because then only this widget's build method would be triggered and not this overall build method. Since here, however, we have nothing that could trigger the build method, we can also use a builder function. So that's just a tiny thing you could keep in mind if you wanted to optimize your app. For example, because I'm just talking about it, in the meal detail screen widget, their build section title uses theme off, and therefore it could be an idea to put this into a separate widget. Again, as I said, maybe stored in the same file, so that only that widget's build method would be triggered if the theme changes. Now, it's of course important to keep in mind that in our app, however, the theme will never change. So for this app, that wouldn't matter. It wouldn't make a difference. And besides that, we're also using the theme here in our main build method anyways, so that would be triggered anyways. So it could be outsourced, but it wouldn't make a difference here. But let's go back to our drawer now, to our drawer widget. We have our build list tile method. We're building the list tiles here. Now I'd say it's of course time to also see something on the screen. And for that, let's use our main drawer here in the tabs screen on that drawer argument in the scaffold. So here, instead of creating a new drawer, I'll use main drawer, the custom widget we just worked on. And of course, for that to be available here, we need to import it with that import syntax, go up one level, go into the widgets folder, and then import main drawer.dart. With that, we can assign the main drawer here. And now, if we go back to our app, we open the drawer, we should see this custom drawer, which, in my opinion, looks quite nice. And we can tap these items, but for now, of course, nothing's happening there. Let's change that in the next lectures.